History has produced a variety of extraordinary leaders. And it's often easy to look at them, the Nelson Mandelas and the Aung San Suu Kyis of the world, and think that the power to influence only belongs to a select few. Well, today I'm here to tell you that we're all extraordinary and we all possess a power to influence world change through individuals. This power could almost be called a superpower, the power to put your arm around someone at the precise moment in time they require encouragement to exceed a previous best and say, mate, we're almost there, you can do it. I'm talking about the power of mentoring, and while I've been aware of this for years, I truly discovered it on the streets of New York the year before last. I'm a father, a husband, a police officer, an obsessed recreational angler, and after a very close involvement in the first year of Rob D. Castella's Indigenous marathon project, I'm also a mentor. So a couple of years ago, I had a telephone call from Australian of the Year and World Marathon Champion Rob D. Castella. Rob wanted to take a small group of Indigenous young Australians to New York to compete in the New York Marathon, and along the way, arm them with the requisite skills and attributes to become future community leaders. Now, being a new idea, this was really exciting. There were so many unknowns. And two key components of this idea were locating a suitable pool of candidates to go to New York and providing them with the necessary support along the road to New York. And that's where my involvement was born. Well, as my involvement accelerated, so too did my mind. Perhaps I could run the marathon too. Maybe if I ran it, this would help the athletes. If a 40-year-old copper can do it, anyone can do it. Can I do it? It's 42.195 kilometres. That's a long way. And I'd heard that they turned the traffic lights on right across the course after 7 hours. How embarrassing would that be? And then more doubts. I'm not trained as a mentor. I've never run a marathon before. I've got a family, a full-time job, a fishing addiction. Will I have time? And that brings me to my first point. Any time invested in mentoring represents a wise investment. Mentoring can take many forms. In its most pure form, it's just one person's ability to help another person's capability and help them do their very, very best. As John Cosby calls it, mentoring's a brain to pick, an ear to listen to, and a push in the right direction. It's guidance based on experience, not necessarily on any particular skill or competence. And that time-honoured foundation of good habit, a little bit often, regardless of time, is a recipe for success. And with that, I felt confident, comfortable, excited, and ready to embark on the physical and emotional roller coaster ride of a lifetime. On the edge of a sports oval at the foot of Anzac Hill, I met the runners. I had no words of wisdom to offer them, but what I could offer was my support and my enthusiasm for what they were doing. I didn't know what to say to them, and what came out was this. I said, I believe in what you're doing. I want to support you all the way. And if you can do it, I can do it too. And that brings me to my second point. In supporting a mentee, you don't necessarily have to do what the mentee does, but you do have to win their trust and respect. And my strategy for doing that was to commit to running the marathon too. There are many ways to win trust and respect. So be creative, but whatever you do, be genuine. I spent the next year and a half mentoring this young man, TEDxDarwin, a fine young Australian from Madden Green and community. We'd go for morning runs before work, swimming pool sessions, running club for a year and a half every Wednesday after work. And together with other members of the project team, we attended training camps in Kings Canyon, the Australian Institute of Sport, running through the absolute splendour and beauty of Central Australia and Arnhem Land, and overseas, the first ever Timor-Leste peace run, coupled with a presidential dinner and a presidential meet. Injury, fatigue, new relationships, travel experiences. Didn't take long for me to realise that I too was about to grow. As this journey gained momentum, a number of key components of the mentoring relationship began to crystallise. And so to my third point, a bundle of key ingredients absolutely essential to any mentoring relationship. These principles cut across cultures, they cut across international boundaries, and they cut through bureaucracy. Without action they fail, with action they produce. They are incremental in proposition. An evolution, not a revolution. First of all, create a shared vision. I remember in the very early stages of the program driving down to Joanne's at 5:30 in the morning to do a pre-work run and still get myself to the office by 8 o'clock. And I struggled in the early days to even get past the well-guarded, dog-guarded security gate at the front to get him out of bed to go for a run. A shared vision seemed an eternity away. And so clearly we had to stop and have a chat about how this mentoring relationship was going to look and feel. And we did. And it didn't take long before two very different people started to forge a very shared understanding of what it was we were about to embark on. And with further exposure to Rob and the rest of the athletes, the shared vision was born to make it to New York and, if possible, to make it across the finishing line. To make it to New York and, if possible, make it across the finishing line. Creating vision is leadership in its most pure form. And the shared vision is the backbone of a mentoring relationship. Start with the end in mind. It's a simple but very powerful concept. Secondly, constantly build trust. Nellie Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, said, "You never truly know and understand a man until you see things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and you walk in it." I spent days and days with Joanne and his family out in the community. He'd come into town and sit at my desk, and through saying what you mean and meaning what you say, these foundations of trust are established. Thirdly, take time to celebrate your success. It was Winston Churchill who said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it's the courage to continue that counts." Every step of the way along this mentoring marathon journey, we celebrated success. Whether it was Joanne running for as far and as long as he'd ever run before, or getting his first passports, through to seeing the sights and sounds of New York, every step of the way we celebrated success. And at the Sydney City to Surf run with Joseph, one of the other athletes, I witnessed his family watch his incremental success. Another fine young Australian. I watched Joseph, the emerging champion, and Rob Castella, the established champion, do a live television interview before that race began. We had breakfast with Olympic champions, all of us, celebrating success every step of the way. And finally, be very careful how you define failure. If the person you're mentoring grows, exceeds a previous best, but doesn't necessarily achieve the final goal, have they failed? Mentoring, like life, is not a zero-sum game. And I remember vividly at the very start of the project, Rob sat us all down and he said to us, "The measure of success for this project will not be whether or not the athletes cross the finish line at New York. We've just finished watching the London Olympics, where the emphasis all throughout was on getting a medal. So I ask you, do people lose gold medals or do they win silver? The fact is, if you're on the field, if you're in the swimming pool, you're in the arena, you're on the team at the Olympic Games, you're already a champion. And so too, these four fine young men from Indigenous Australia were already champions, long before they set foot on a plane to New York. From the red dust of the Australian outback to the 24/7 lights of New York, and after days of kicking the footy and running around Central Park, it was race day, showtime. A 4 a.m. bus ride to the start line. Back to sleep on the ground, freezing cold, wrapped in sleeping bags, socks on hands. And a few hours later, a 1 kilometre walk to the start line to join a 40,000 strong sea of humanity. And then the race itself began. It was everything you might imagine a marathon to be. It was exhilarating, physically demanding, mentally challenging. And at points throughout the race, both Joanne and I hit the dreaded wall, and we were presented with the opportunity to give up. But that superpower of mentoring kicked in. And it worked both ways. That belief in each other kept us both going. And this is when I learnt the most important mentoring lesson of all. Here is the moment I will always remember, and I hope you will too.
Untitled Darwin.
Andy and Joanne have a really special relationship, and for Joanne to have Andy turn up right at that critical point, I think, sort of really just gave him another lease and really, spurred him on and got him going again.
I was just thinking, I don't want to stop. I just kind of finish the line. I just keep on running.
Isn't that just the most amazing testament to the human spirit? So a year later, and again, I'm standing on the edge of a sports oval. Only this time I'm watching Juan. He's working with a group of incoming Indigenous marathon project candidates. He's conducting their fitness tests and he's talking to them about New York. The mentee had become a mentor, and I can tell you right now, it is one of the most rewarding feelings you will ever experience to watch somebody grow like that. Rob de Castella's Indigenous Marathon Project's in its 3rd year now, and his vision remains the same, to see an Indigenous Australian athlete in the marathon event at the 2016 Olympics. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to be a world champion or a genius to exercise the power that I've spoken about today. I'm not. You are all extraordinary, and you are surrounded in your lives, your families, your communities and your workplaces by equally extraordinary people. Some of them in need of guidance, waiting for you to mentor. Imagine the additional human capital the world would experience if you did. And so my question to you today is this: how are you going to exercise your mentoring superpower? And when are you going to run your mentoring marathon? Our journey began in outback Australia and on the streets of New York in 2010. Your journey begins today. Here. Right now.